What is up? Welcome to the first ever American Dystopian Democracy Discussions. Tonight we will have 8 candidates speak, and each will have 5 to 7 minutes to speak, and then another 3 to 5 minute segment where either I or you, the audience, can ask a question. What is up? Welcome. So make sure that you like, share, and subscribe, and as always, tweet it out. Tonight's topic is going to be climate change, and we will get into that with our first guest. Let me get him on here on the screen. Our first guest is Jason Sigmon, who is running as an independent in Texas. Jason is a software developer. He is running as an independent for the U.S. House of Representatives in Texas District 32 versus Democratic incumbent Colin Allred and GOP challenger Genevieve Collins. Welcome to the show. You have the floor, sir. Climate change, all you.
Let's do it. Well, I have the distinctive honor of going first, so hopefully I'll make your Friday night entertaining. I want to thank everyone for carving some time off to talk about what is certainly an important issue, particularly in this time of crisis. As hopefully we have a chance to come out with a better America. Whether that's hopefully in a few months or maybe a little bit longer. I think the biggest thing is don't go back to the way things were. So with the subject of climate change, you tell that or you raise it to an issue and some people say, oh, existential crisis, number one concern. Other people may say, I could care less. You've been telling me since the 70s that the world is going to end or that the earth is going to heat up and, we're still here. Now you're throwing out predictions of, maybe by 2100, if I don't change my habits, then, whatever. And so for me, particularly as an independent, I think it's most important to how do we change the conversation to less of, your lifestyle, what you believe is wrong, and it's interfering, and more so of how do I incentivize or entice you to, this is how I make, environmentalism or climate change more relevant to you. And I think it starts with, talking about things that really relate particularly to working class and middle class people. And in my mind, that's 3 things. It's water, it's food, and it's clean air. And so I'll start with clean air first. So I don't know about you, but as my city of Dallas, Texas has been shut down, despite all the heartache, despite all the concerns about going outside, being around people, it has been so nice to finally have clean air, particularly as someone who lives near a highway and, you see the dirt come in, you hear the noise, and sure, it's somewhat, still there, but it is night and day difference, the power of actually not having so many people in a car going from point A to point B. And, it's a very simple thing. Okay, great. Have electric vehicles, mass transportation, like whatever. But really what it manifests to is having, asthma in kids, being in urban cores that have the air quality of essentially standing behind a pickup truck and breathing in. And it really has an overall negative effect on people's lives that I think a lot of people don't realize. You see, okay, well, I'm going to put this modifier on my truck. I'm going to burn some more carbon. All the hippies and liberals can suffer, like whatever. But I don't think that there's been enough of here's why this is actually bad for you or for your kids. And I think really having that conversation of, hey, we're going to have to rebuild, industry or really rethink how we get from point A to point B or maybe have less people traveling. So why not do it in a way that actually benefits you and your family by having clean air? So that's the first one. The second is clean food. Around the turn of the 20th century, the book The Jungle by Upton Sinclair really, got a lot of attention. It really showed the dark side of big food, the meat packing industry, and that despite you thinking that the meat packing industry process may just be the cow just gets slaughtered and then it somehow ends up in your grocery store, there was a lot of stuff that was really shady beyond that. And though we are not in those dark times, it does also feel like with the rise of big food and large-scale industrial farming that we're seeing these issues slowly but surely start to crop up. I mean, whether it's in E. coli outbreaks from agricultural runoff or now struggling with, who can you potentially get in to go to meat packing facilities because of, health concerns or other issues. And it really just presents, an opportunity to how do you rethink how food, is from farm to table or really gets in front of people, because so many people in this country, unfortunately, live in a food desert or, they don't have access to fresh vegetables. They don't have access to clean food. They're really their only way of access to any type of food is at potentially a liquor store or at a convenience store. And I think we all can agree that that's probably not the best way to have a nutritious diet. It leads to obesity, it leads to other issues. And I think, again, we can start to refine that, whether that is building more community farms, I'm certainly in favor of trying to get grocery stores into areas that are food deserts, or, really just exploring how do we constrain how far the food has to travel to really get into front of someone. And I think hopefully start to address a lot of the larger health issues that come from not having a healthy diet. And the final one, and perhaps most important, is clean water. And for me, I think it's a national disgrace that for the most part, not only has no one been punished for what happened in Flint, there still is not really consistent high quality water there. Residents now, I believe it's almost 4 years later, are still having to get bottled water because they don't trust what comes out of their tap. And to me, that's just ridiculous that here we are, the most advanced, supposedly industrial country, and we can't even deliver what is a basic necessity of clean water. And what's really scary potentially is it's not just in Flint that has these issues. We have degraded pipes all throughout the U.S. that have been underinvested in because people view the water board or the water bond as, oh, whatever, it's fine. And so you potentially have lead or other issues getting into water supplies because we don't have a system to really keep track of it. And here in Texas, really what's been one of the big problems is with petrochemical and plastic companies, that runoff getting into water, infecting people, and largely environmental agencies more or less giving people a slap on the wrist. And that's very dangerous when you have people consume plastic and enters the bloodstream, and it's just it creates jobs or it's good for the economy. Well, yeah, it creates jobs, but at what cost? At what point do we decide that the health benefits, the deaths are just not worth it anymore? And another part of this with kind of plastics is recycling. And as someone who actually ran a recycling company in Hong Kong, it's like seeing the end of the line when this stuff went to China, when that was still an option. There's not really a solution either, because it really is more or less trying to shame people and saying, oh, you should recycle this, and this is somehow your responsibility to deal with, when there's not a really large scale use of recycling or reusing materials. And then it ends up just being wasted. And so really what I would like to see us coming out of this is how do we move away from more consumer responsibility into more producer responsibility to produce quality products that are biodegradable, that are good for the environment, and do it in such a way that not, people can't afford it, but hopefully we're doing it in such a way that it's a mass scale and really presents, new opportunities both for business, but for local kind of consumers. And you're not just held hostage to the large factory that's polluting your rivers or polluting your lakes or polluting your food supply, and really kind of move forward. Because whenever there is a tragedy or, an instance like we're having now with COVID, it's always having two paths. It's either you go back to the way things were, or you view it as a chance to change for the better. And for me, I think that the way things were going into this crisis were not good enough. And it's really shameful what we've created in this country. And I think that it really presents an opportunity to come out and create the America that all of us really want to see, that really, not only takes care of people, but really takes care of the environment in a way that doesn't feel, touchy-feely, but manifests into you're staying healthy, you're having clean food, you're trusting that the water that comes out of your tap is reliable. And so if those things all sound good to you, I'd certainly love to get in touch, because this campaign that I'm running is really a totally grassroots funded movement. And you can find me on Twitter. Love to chat.
I tell you, Jason, you've got your stump speech down, because I mean, you took up the whole 10 minutes almost. So if I had one question for you, I would ask you, you were talking about the food supply really quickly. GMOs, what do you do about them?
Yeah, I think it's, I've been reading and kind of actually watching a lot about that. I think GMOs to some degree are, I hate to say necessary evil, but I think necessary evil is the right word. GMOs really provide the opportunity to feed people at scale. And I don't think we quite have a solution around how to feed people at scale yet. But I think what we could potentially do is how do we use science and sort of more natural processes together that, we're not making the Monsanto 2 clone where we're really, killing birds, killing the environment, killing bugs, but we are also able to make hopefully pest-resistant crops, or crops that are more durable and, hopefully can feed more people, because, the world is going to continue to grow. And I think that we really need to find a way that it's not either or, but it's both together. So I think ultimately with GMOs, if it's used right, I think it's great, but I think it also shouldn't be, killing the environment or worse for the environment at the end of the day.
Jason, I think that was a great answer because I agree with you. I think both sides are definitely necessary. Jason, thank you so much for being on the show. Come back and see us.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Have a good weekend.
You too. All right, that was one candidate down. Now we got Blair. Blair is coming up. Let's get her added to the stream. Blair Walsingham. Did I pronounce that right?
You actually got it right. You're one of the few.
Hey, well, you know what? I kind of understand that little situation you got there. So we want to thank you for coming on the show. As you know, our topic tonight is climate change. You have 5 to 7 minutes and then maybe a couple minutes for a question or two. Take it away.
Okay, yeah. All right, sounds great. I didn't prepare a stump speech for this, but I did want to talk about a few different things. And one of the huge things that's really important to me, and I think across America, is dealing with the school system. And when I first say education, you probably don't think about saving the planet, but they actually go hand in hand. And one creative way I have found to solve some of our funding problems with the school is to switch to solar panels. We found out that on average, a school spends 40% of their budget just paying the electric bill. In some cases, upward to 60% of their budget. And that's the second highest spending other than just paying the teachers. So by switching over to the solar panels, they could actually get that 40 to 60% of their budget back in their pockets to improve education, buy new computers for the kids, give their teachers raises, whatever it may be, while also doing something good for the environment. And it's a huge number. We have like 5,500 schools who have already completely switched over, and it saves billions of dollars. We're up to about $6 billion a year just in electric there. And what is so important about it involving the environment is actually how we do it too. It's got to be done sustainably. And that's a problem that we do see with solar, is with the mining of the rare earth minerals. But we do have some companies right now who are working really hard to be proactive and come up with some solutions to this, such as Tesla. The new Tesla engines don't have any of the rare earth minings actually in the engine, while some of your more common items like your iPhone or your smartwatch, they still do. So there's a lot of room here for improvement, but we need to push forward. There's actually a lot of bills coming through about this. My favorite one I found that I'd love for you guys to look up is the Comprehensive Environmental Response and Compensation and Liability Act. It is a mouthful. It is actually very long, but it's great. So what it does is it makes sure that the companies that plan to do the mining, one, have the funding guaranteed to say we can actually do the job here, and that we're not going to leave all of this waste behind. We're not going to leave this huge sore in the earth. They have to actually be prepared and make sure there's no runoff, no chemical pollutants put in. It's all about accountability. And this is where I find it so important for the environment. Yes, we need to move to green energy. Yes, we can solve a lot of problems, but we need to do it right. We don't want to be where we are today, where we're drowning in plastic. However many years ago we said, yes, plastic is the answer to save our forests. Let's save the trees. Let's use plastic. And now it's like literally inside of us. Every living thing has microplastics actually in it. So we want to make these right choices. And that is the huge part of moving to these green energies. We have to do it the right way. And I think this is a great way to do that. So we got to talk about recycling in there too. They use lithium, cobalt, nickel, a variety of different minerals that we mine right now. And a lot of this can actually be done through recycling. So it gives a lot of companies right now who may waste it, it's not worth it to them to recycle it or go through that process. And by giving some kind of incentives or certifications, we could get those companies to get in with this and get in business with the solar panel companies and make this a really renewable, recyclable effort that works for everybody and saves the earth a lot. So, and the other thing I really wanted to bring up tonight was hemp and cannabis and how it can help not just the environment as a whole, but local businesses, local farmers, and actually our local lands. And I think a lot of people are really shy on this topic. They're not well educated. We grew up in the era where we were just told it's this awful thing, and we don't realize that it You can actually eat hemp. If you guys don't know this, hemp hearts are great. You can add them to smoothies. You can add them to oatmeal. They're very nutty flavor. They're fantastic. They actually give you all of your omegas, your omega-3, omega-6, and some other ones actually that I had never even heard of. So it's not just great for the earth. You can do so much with it. Anything that is currently made from plastic can be made from hemp. It's biodegradable, renewable, sustainable. It grows extremely quick. It takes minimal amount of water. It's naturally pest resistant. It takes you don't need pesticides to put on it. It's going to keep stuff away. It actually renews the earth for your next crop. So it improves your land quality in the long run also. So we've got a huge way to use hemp and cannabis also. They have very similar qualities. There's minimal difference, but it replaces trees as the source for raw materials for paper products or toiletries. We could easily use hemp. And there's some great factories out there now who are actually using hemp to make hardwood floors. And it's phenomenal. It's naturally, again, pest resistant. It's harder than any hardwood floor we've had to date. It's naturally fire resistant. And again, it's going to be sustainable. It's going to save a lot of our forests in the long run. It's just a phenomenal way to go. So that puts me at 6 minutes. So I'll pause for a second and see if you've got anything for me.
I do actually, Blair. I've got to apologize to you. I was so excited about pronouncing your last name right that I forgot to do your introduction. So we'll do that right now. Blair is running for the U.S. House in Tennessee District 1. Blair is an Air Force veteran, outdoorswoman, small business owner, and mother. Her campaign is laser focused on helping the first district survive today and thrive tomorrow. Blair believes for our community to thrive long term, we must ensure people have enough money to last each month through universal basic income, squeeze the big money out of politics. That is such a great statement for sure. But I wanted to touch real quick on the last 3 minutes that you were talking about hemp, and you're one of the few people that I've seen come out really, really strongly about that, which I appreciate. A lot of people don't understand that. Like I'm pretty sure it was Ford when he made his car. He made the fenders out of hemp. And they show him like hitting it with a sledgehammer, and it's like not even moving. It's crazy strong. It's like one of the most versatile plants on the planet. And why it's so underutilized beyond me. But if you want to talk about that for another couple minutes, that would be great.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm so glad you've heard about that. I read that and was pretty amazed myself. And there's so many uses. I initially came across it, like he said, I'm a mother. I have 4 kids. My oldest are 12 and 13. I have a 1.5-year-old and a 2.5-year-old. I do cloth diaper for majority of the time. And some of my first ones, they were hemp blends. And I was like, wow, I was expecting it to be like really hard and not this super soft absorbent thing. And it is. It's actually phenomenally soft and absorbent. It's great. They make great dish rags out of hemp. If you've never tried them, go on Etsy or Google, look up a small business. They make them. They're wonderful. They come in any color and pattern you can imagine. But yeah, so hemp is it's just so versatile. And like I said, a lot of people don't talk about it. And it's a growing thing right now where people are getting more interested, and it's mostly because of, I would say, legalization and because of the CBD oil side of it, which is another factor. It is extremely lucrative if you do it right. So there's a lot of factors that play into growing hemp. You need to know what strain of the plant you are getting. Some have high levels of the cannabinoids, the CBDs, and some have THC, which they're the 2 different main components that people look for when they're growing. So in order to have the CBD quality, you have to have the low levels of THC. And I've seen a lot of people, they go out, they got really excited, they grow hemp and they think they're going to sell it to be processed into oil, and then they can't, and they're sitting on this hemp. It's something that you guys really need to look into. Know what you're going to grow before you grow it. Find processing plants, know what to do with it, because there is a wide range of plants. Like I said, some you eat, some are harvested to make cloth, some are, for hardwood floors. And my main focus would love to swap from single-use plastics to hemp. There is absolutely no reason that we're not doing this yet, except for that big corporations want to keep making money with what they're already doing. So I would really encourage you to look into that. There's a ton of information out there, a lot of studies. You can contact a lot of the hemp processing plants. They love to get this out there because, obviously they love it too. That's why they're in this business in the first place. But just the fact that It can feed people, it can clothe people, it can replace plastic, it can actually be made into fuel. It's a widely abundant, easily farmed, sustainable resource that we need to really jump on.
Completely underrated. Blair, thank you so much for being on Democracy Discussions. Please come back and visit us very, very soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah, and if you guys don't mind, head over to blairforcongress.com and check it out. See you soon.
Absolutely. 2 down. We got several more to go. Our next guest, let me get Blair's name off the screen here. Our next guest is going to be Rob Anderson. Rob, how are you doing this evening, brother?
No, I'm doing good. How about you?
Doing good. I'm going to do your introduction here. Rob is a Democrat running for Louisiana's 3rd Congressional District. His background includes time spent in the IT field and on the construction site. He's a problem solver who supports the working class, and his supporters are affectionately known as the Rob Mob. That sounds like a group that I want to be in. Rob, we're talking climate change tonight, brother. Take it away.
Yes, sir. Yeah, the Rob Mob, that's the hashtag Rob Mob, no doubt. That's our Twitter handle. And if you ever search around Twitter, obviously that's where our notoriety started. Hashtag Rob Mob, one sentence. Hi, my name is Rob Anderson. I'm running for the U.S. House of Representatives in Louisiana's 3rd Congressional District, which is Southwest Louisiana. That stretches from Texas all the way halfway to Mississippi River along the southern part of Louisiana, includes Lake Charles, Lafayette. Now we have an area that's very rural and urban. We have a lot of both. Now by urban, we're not talking on Dallas standards with multiple millions, but Lafayette and Lake Charles are pretty good sized towns. But we have a lot of rural residents. So, and a lot of what Louisiana is known for is the natural beauty. We have a lot of rivers, bayous, basins, the Atchafalaya Basin. And so that's what we're going to be here talking about today specifically. Our district is probably a little too heavily reliant on the oil and gas industry. And that's kind of what we're running on, is utilizing the search for new jobs as a way of addressing climate change, specifically in our district. We have a stagnant economy, of course. Every time oil goes down, which, as you know, it did a couple weeks back, crashed to negative 36 barrel. Well, down here, that means stagnant economy. That means layoffs. That means all the other industries are affected because people aren't out spending money because they're laid off or out of work altogether. Plants are stalled. The oil and gas kind of dominates this region in a way that we need to get past, and that's what my campaign is really about. We want to push for alternative energies such as solar, wave generators, other things. One, it's a booming job market. Two, it's obviously a push towards green energy. Three, it's an $8 billion industry waiting to happen down here, adding solar to supplement. And then ultimately, of course, the hope is, someday down the road to clean the air up altogether and be working on alternative energies that are renewable. So since our economy is way too reliant on the oil and gas, what ends up happening is what we call economic environmentalism. All these petro plants, oil and gas, are invariably put into poor Black communities, which then turn into cancer clusters and cancer alleys, poisoning the water, poisoning the air. And it's also, attacking minority groups because, it lowers the land value, except for the industry itself. For everybody else, do you want to live in somewhere where your drinking water is going to be filled with benzene? Of course not. So pushing alternative energies is our approach here, not to fight the oil and gas industry, but just kind of trying to bring Louisiana up to the 21st century would be awesome. Oil and gas industry obviously also contributes to coastal loss. Here we got 10,000 miles of open canals that these oil plants put in all around the bayous and the basins, to get their oil in and out. And then, of course, contractually, they're supposed to fill them back in, restore it, and they don't. They just sort of walk away and go build the next plant. And that's another thing that, we'd like to see addressed. So we want to diversify our economy. We want more renewable energy, more high tech, better infrastructure. All these are tied together. And there is no reason that Louisiana should not be leading the nation in new energy innovation, to make a rhyme there for you. We are the 25% of the country's energy comes through Louisiana, whether or not people know that. That's 25%. This entire country we provide, and there's no reason we shouldn't be on the forefront of the next wave of solar and wave generators and wind turbines. We got a lot of land, as Blair just mentioned, and then it was a great thing to bring up. The cannabis issue is cannabis legalization is a big part of our platform on the federal level. Descheduling it as a Schedule I narcotic, getting it legal, upping your tax base, hemp. We have a great, agricultural sector here, which could immediately switch over to hemp, because down here in Louisiana, you'd get 3 crops a year, which, that's a much more renewable and eco-friendly plant. And we have examples already. We just put in Plaquemine, we put in the Entergy is the company's name, solar plant. So, this is quite doable. We're not fighting the oil and gas industry. We want to work with it. We want to bring it to the 21st century. And since I think we're running down to about a minute to go, my name is Rob Anderson. My website, of course, is robandersonforcongress.com. On Twitter, I'm at Rob Anderson 2018. On Facebook, I'm Rob Anderson for Louisiana. My name is Rob Anderson. I'm in Louisiana. And if you Google some combination of those, you'll probably find me.
He is Rob Anderson. Rob, we had a question that came in
Sure.
in the last couple minutes, and it come in from Serpent77, and he said, "Hey Rob, what are your thoughts on next gen nuclear in addition to solar, wind, and wave?"
Well, I have the straight answer on that. Fortunately, if you research that and you look at the numbers on that, nuclear power is actually one of the safest power sources, and it's also the most efficient power generation facilities that can be had, especially thorium reactors. I'm not sure what you're saying there. I'm sorry. So yeah, I would be pro nuclear power in that, aside from the bad press it gets, it is a very safe and productive way of generating fuel. It's been widely used across Europe to great effect.
It has, but then you see now thorium is not as it's like the next wave, but then you look at the old wave, which was the way we were doing things. Then you come up with things like Fukushima, and just it's still pouring waste into the ocean.
Well, yeah, I would recommend probably not building them in earthquake zones. Myself, and the same with Chernobyl. I'd definitely recommend not to have them built under the authority of the 1980s Soviet Union. But barring those two, nuclear power is very safe. So it is something we would look at.
Awesome. Rob, thank you so much for being on Democracy Discussions tonight. We hope that you'll come back and see us.
I'd love to. Thank you for having me on.
All right. Thank you, Rob. Another one down and a few more to go. Let me get Rob's name off of here. Our next guest is going to be Dr. Richard Thripp. How are you tonight?
Good. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Let me do your introduction here.
Yeah.
Dr. Richard Thripp is a 28-year-old husband, father, and university instructor who is running for Congress as a progressive Democrat in Florida's 6th District, which centers around Daytona Beach, where Richard was born and raised. He advocates for expanding Medicaid as a step toward Medicare for all, a Green New Deal, and a universal basic income. I saw a Green New Deal in there, and you're in luck because we're talking climate change tonight on Democracy Discussions. Dr. Richard Thripp, take it away, brother.
All right. Nice to see you all again tonight. Yeah, for us, we have a big problem with hurricanes, as you might have heard, in Florida. And so we had a near miss with Dorian just last year. And, that could have hit us. The Bahamas got really battered, and we suffered here on the east coast of Florida with Matthew and Irma. And of course, Michael didn't hit here, but hit the Panhandle. And that was unprecedented. They upgraded that after to a Cat 5. And they're still rebuilding there. People are still suffering. So I'm running here. I was born and raised here. And I went to college here, commuted to Orlando for my master's and PhD in education at University of Central Florida. But I know the district real well, and I think that's a big advantage to me. Here we have Daytona Beach, Deltona, Palm Coast. The guy I was in now is real big on Trump. Oh man, he's like Trump's favorite person, you know. It's just ridiculous how they're coming out with all kinds of BS, you know. Climate change is really that, it's so simple because you can just look at the amount of carbon dioxide that's in the air now. And that's something they learned, of course, to measure back in the 50s or 60s in Hawaii. And it's gone up so quick and never before went up this fast in history of the planet. You know, it's been 3 million years or so since it was at 417 parts per million. And at that time, that was not a planet that you would want to live on as Earth was 3 million years ago. It's a lot hotter. Oceans were a lot higher, and you know it would have been a disaster. And so we don't know what's coming for us because, well, I mean, we don't know how bad it will be because of that. So you got the oil, as the previous guests were saying, in Louisiana. We don't really do that here anymore after Deepwater Horizons. Not even Republicans support offshore drilling in Florida. But nevertheless, what happens all over the world affects everyone when it comes to climate change. You can emit, you know, fires in Australia affect us here because they put out more carbon dioxide, and you've got all those feedback loops where, you know, when you get the temperature being warmer as it is, more air conditioning, you know, more and more emissions. I think we need a Green New Deal 20 years ago or even longer. Most of the emissions that have happened have been in the past 35 years for all of human emissions throughout history. And our population is much bigger. You know, we're developing so much. We're developing in areas that you know haven't been developed before, and any sensible person would say, nah, you don't want to do that. You know, obviously, if we went back, there's a lot of stuff we wouldn't do now. But take what you've got, like we've got in Daytona Beach. They just built, everything's getting built on the outskirts of town. The beach side, like right near the beach, looks like trash. I mean, it's just run down, and it's been that way for a while. And really, you know, we could use a federal grant to redevelop that if we can't get money at the state level. And it's just not going that way because everything gets plowed into, oh, let's develop, you know, swampland over here on the outskirts of town. Let's close down the Burlington Coat Factory that's right there in the main area of town, and they're way out on the outskirts. We have the only new Sam's Club in the whole country that opened last year. And it was just to replace the other Sam's Club because they're like, they got tired of that one, you know? And so that's terrible for the climate. I'm so surprised that, you know, we haven't had more of a blue wave so far in Florida, but I think there's going to be a change because if climate change, if you don't believe that, you believe coronavirus. You know, coronavirus is very clear that we could have done so much better. And they're just trying to deflect the blame to say that, oh, it's China. Yeah, China has some blame in it, but you know, every day disastrous decisions or lack of action is happening from this administration, whereby, you know, you don't even know what's going to happen. Like our governor, I'm running for the seat that was held by our governor, Ron DeSantis. So this would be such a big slap in the face if this district flips blue this year. It is one that Trump won 57 to 40, but I believe Obama won it. Some metrics say he didn't, but the thing is, it got changed. The district has been completely different in its configuration since 2016. It's very rectangular now, which is nice. It used to be gerrymandered. And so the guy who ran 2016 didn't campaign at all. And the woman who ran last time, Ambassador Nancy Soderberg, ended up losing by 13 points, and she didn't expect it. She was tremendous at fundraising. But one of the issues with her candidacy is that she was from Jacksonville. Our district does not include Jacksonville. It only goes up to just south of St. Augustine. And we always have people come here who don't really know the area, didn't grow up here, and they run here. And so I think a lot of people I'm hearing are refreshed to see someone local running. And we had people run that were local last time, but they just didn't win the primary. My primary, I'm up against a guy who has run for Congress 3 times before, never won a primary, never won a general. And I think we have a solid shot at it. And a lot of people are coming out to support me. Everything I do is very frugal. I've only raised $1,300, and I do have ActBlue, and you can get me online at thripp.com or thrippforcongress.com. Either one will work. And so we got volunteers. One person I got that's volunteering, she's gone all out, making websites, working on Facebook ads, working on merchandise, and really giving the voters a choice this time. Because the guy who is in, Michael Waltz, he is the first Green Beret to ever serve. But now, you know, he just is all in on Donald Trump, saying how great he is. Oh, he abandoned the Kurds. Our congressman has to defend that. Oh, he agreed to release 5,000, you know, Taliban prisoners in an arrangement with Afghanistan. He's like, oh, that's all right. It's like, what are you talking about? Like, and I don't even know military stuff well. I just know that what we're doing isn't working. And when you hear people say that, we need to be doing more. Basically, that's his position, is we needed to do like 10 times more in Iraq and Afghanistan. Then we would have, you know, really done well with it instead of it dragging on. It's like, I think you're too close to the problem, and you're not seeing that we, you know, don't need to be nation building all over the world. And that has a big impact on climate change. So I'll get back to that for the last couple minutes before I take some questions. Thank you, Justin, if that was for me. And someone put my Twitter in there, thanks, Josh, that if we were to have a Green New Deal, we would stop subsidizing these oil companies and the fracking, which is a total disaster, doesn't make money when oil is $20 a barrel, let alone minus $37 like it was briefly on the futures market recently. And destroys fresh water, has to use, you know, easy credit to be able to fund it, and isn't even accounting for having to burn off natural gas that comes out of the ground that they don't know what to do with as a byproduct of oil. It's just totally insane. All that stuff really just needs to stay in the ground, because that would be so much cheaper in the long run. So you have these jobs, I mean, they're good jobs in like the Dakotas or Pennsylvania or other parts of the country, but basically you're shooting yourself in the foot. Like, you're getting a cent now, and it's going to cost you 100 times more, like a whole dollar later, and it just doesn't make sense. If you get behind green technologies, like what, you know, Elon Musk is doing, what we're doing with hydro, what we're doing with solar. We are the sunshine state in Florida, even though it's not economical to use solar panels too much because of the low cost of electricity here, which is based on using, you know, oil, natural gas, and coal. If you get behind that, it will come down in cost. If you stop subsidizing these failing, dying fossil fuels, and if you did to start supercharging it by subsidizing new technologies, those will catch fire, and the United States of America will be a global leader. We'll be exporting this stuff all over the world. You know, China, India, Russia, Africa, all of it, they're all going to be wanting to use this technology, and it's already got to the point where coal isn't profitable. It's not sensible, even without factoring in the emissions costs. So I think that's our way forward. We got to do something now. You can't go much further this way, because we're on the precipice of a disaster, and there are disasters happening every year. I mean, this season we're looking at 8 hurricanes. It's a prediction that are going to form, you know, and some of those might hit Florida. It's just terrible. And people keep moving to Florida. We got 300,000 new people a year moving into Florida. We're about to gain 2 congressional seats next year. So I'm Richard Thripp, and find me online, thripp.com. I'm on Twitter at RichardXThripp, just put an X between my first and last name. And feel free to help out. We're going to start phone banking soon. You can do that anywhere in the country if you'd like to help.
For sure. And just sitting here listening to you, I'm telling you, to me, you sound like way too smart to be running for I mean, it seems like, I don't know, but I understand. It's like we've gotten to this point where we have to do something. We have to do something now. Mm-hmm. And it's on all of us. And you know, you just hearing you talk, it's so inspiring that you know you're down there and you're like in the trenches and you're doing this.
Thank you.
So once again, I want you to give out your website and your information again so that people can get in contact with you.
Oh, yes. Go on thrippforcongress.com. That's THR, like the first 3 letters, the number 3, IPP, forcongress.com. I also own thripp.com, and that forwards over there. And you can get me online at Twitter as well. If you want to leave a voicemail, 386-232-8172. 386-232-8172 is the Google Voice number I got set up for that. And you can also send me a text on there if you want to donate or anything.
Awesome. Dr. Thripp, thank you so much for taking part in our first democracy discussions. We hope that you will come back and see us.
Oh, you're welcome, and thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it, and I look forward to being on one in a few weeks.
For sure. All right. I'm telling you what, these candidates are coming in hot. And we got our next guest. Our next guest is Jimmy Cooper. Jimmy, how are you doing this evening, brother?
I'm doing pretty well, and you?
I'm doing awesome. Let me read your introduction real quick. Jimmy is a working class American who wants to inspire other working class Americans all over the U.S. to get involved in the political process. Jimmy was the Green Party nominee in the 2018 election for Georgia's 8th Congressional District of the U.S. House of Representatives and has once again secured the Green Party nomination for that same office in the 2020 election. Jimmy has also worked as a volunteer for the Bernie Sanders presidential campaign and the Jill Stein presidential campaign in 2016. Jimmy, tonight's topic is climate change. The floor is yours.
Okay. My name is Jimmy Cooper. I'm the Green Party nominee for Georgia's 8th Congressional District, the United States House of Representatives. I'm running for Congress for several reasons. First of all, if we haven't effectively dealt with the climate crisis by the year 2030, then it's going to be too late. And at that point, nothing else we do is going to matter. This is an existential crisis. We're literally talking about the salvation versus the extinction of the human race as we know it, and we're running out of time to deal with it. And we don't have until 2030 just to get started. By the year 2030, we have to be well underway. We have to have already met certain goals. As it stands now, when this next group of elected officials takes office in January of 2021, we'll be down to 9 years. And if we put things off until the next presidential election, we'll be down to 5 years. And there's no guarantee that we'll be able to get things done, everything done that needs to be done before it's too late. We need to get started now. And the way that we deal with the climate crisis is to put into place the Green New Deal. Specifically, I endorse Green Party presidential candidate Howie Hawkins' version of the Green New Deal. The Green New Deal will create up to 40 million new living wage jobs and transition us over to 100% clean renewable energy by the year 2030. Also, we're headed toward a second Great Depression. It took the original Green New Deal to get us out of the first depression. It's going to take the Green New Deal plus other progressive changes like Medicare for all, living wage jobs for all Americans, and universal basic income to get us out of this next one. And that takes us to the second reason why I'm running for Congress. Too many Americans struggle these days just to get by, and our nation has enough wealth for every American to live a good life. We need changes that work, or we need changes that benefit working class Americans. And the only way for that to happen is for working class Americans to organize and run for office ourselves, and for all Americans to support working class American progressives. And we can't rely on establishment candidates to do it for us. They don't work for us. They work for their billionaire and corporate donors. Working class Americans need to do it ourselves. We need a system that works for all of the people, not just the 1%. Among other things, we need an expanded Medicare for all single-payer insurance program with affordable monthly payments based on income, with no deductibles, no copays, no co-insurance, no out-of-pocket expenses, that covers everything, including pre-existing conditions, and includes vision and dental. We also need universal basic income, a citizen's dividend that guarantees that all Americans are able to share in our nation's enormous wealth, which we all help to create. I propose a citizen's dividend of at least $1,200 per month for every single adult and $350 per month for every child from now going forward. We also need not just living wage jobs, but thriving wage jobs for every American. People who work for a living ought not to have to struggle to get by. We should make sufficient wages to support our families and to live a good life. $15 an hour is a good starting point, but if the minimum wage had kept up with it with productivity all of these years, it would be $22 to $24 an hour today. We need to get back to the point where the minimum wage is able to provide every American with a decent standard of living. These are changes that we can make, and these are changes that we need to make. And we should only support and vote for candidates who are willing to make progressive changes that work for the American people. And these are just some of the changes that we need to make. For my full platform, please visit my website, jimmycooperforcongress.com. Please also check out my Twitter page at RevolutionaryJC, my Facebook page, Jimmy Cooper for Congress, and my YouTube channel, Building the Revolution. It's been a while since I recorded my last video there, but new content is coming soon. Thank you for listening, and thank you for having me here tonight.
Now, Jimmy, I just wanted to say, man, you know, you kind of got a little Southern to you like I do. And I recognize the accent. We're from down North Carolina way. But I wanted to ask you real quick, because while we have a couple minutes, I want you to talk for the next couple minutes about how the reopening is going down there.
I work at a university, and all the students were sent home early, and they finished their courses online. Faculty and staff have been working from home. Actually, a bunch of people got furloughed because the university lost money because they had to refund student tuition and housing and meal plans and all of that. But based on the governor's saying it's okay to reopen now, faculty and staff are back and things are starting to get back to normal. I think it's maybe a little too soon. I think that given that we've waited out this long, it would be better for us to wait a little bit longer and to make sure that we don't make a mistake, because they're talking about a potential second and third wave of this thing. There's another strain of it that's appeared on the West Coast that is even more contagious. No doubt it'll make its way here. I think, maybe we should have waited a few more weeks to be safe. Nevertheless, I am seeing things slowly open back up. Hopefully we're not jumping the gun.
No doubt. Jimmy, y'all stay safe down there in Georgia. We thank you for being on Democracy Discussions tonight. Once again, give out your information real quick.
JimmyCooperForCongress.com is the website. Twitter address at RevolutionaryJC. Facebook, Jimmy Cooper for Congress, and YouTube channel, Building the Revolution.
There you go. Jimmy Cooper, thank you so much for being here. Come back and see us really, really soon.
Thank you for having me.
That was Jimmy Cooper. My goodness. He just hearing his voice, man, I'm telling you, it brings me back to North Carolina. I miss that accent. Let me get Jimmy's name off of here. Man, okay, this next one's got me nervous. It's got me nervous, yeah. So we are adding to the show. Now, I'm going to attempt this, and don't get mad at me. Your name is Jonathan. Is it Royce or Royce?
Royce, just like Rolls Royce.
Just like Rolls Royce. See, I figured. Now I grew up watching Royce Gracie fight in the UFC, and I figured that I knew when I saw it, I was like, man, it's going to be one way or the other, and I'm sure going to mess it up. So, brother, thank you so much for being here. Let me read your introduction really quick. Jonathan is running in Nevada's most competitive district, Nevada's 4th Congressional District. Jonathan holds a unique title as the nation's youngest congressional candidate. Jonathan's working class experience in film production, hospitality and tourism, and clean energy means he knows the common issues of everyday Nevadans. Inspired by his fellow activists in the heart of Las Vegas, Jonathan Royce Esteban is the people's choice to lead Nevada 04 this November. We are talking climate change tonight. I hope you came prepared.
I did.
Floor is yours.
Let's talk about Nevada. Every state has their own climate challenge. We are a landlocked state, so we are dependent on water that's going to travel from other states. A lot of that is sourced from the Rockies. The Colorado River is a very integral and important part of how we live here in Nevada. It provides us water, provides us energy, and it's a very important resource for much of the American Southwest. So we have to look at the state-specific issues to really be able to delve into how climate change or rising temperatures across the globe are going to affect our communities. In Nevada, we do face a water challenge, being able to meet the demand as more of our population grows. We're going to have to be able to meet the demand for water, as well as being able to get it to communities out in rural Nevada. There's a large, sprawling region of desert land that separates our two largest communities between southern Nevada, where Las Vegas is, and Washoe County, where Reno is. So we have to be addressing our issues locally and trying to decentralize our efforts. But let's also talk about some of the practical ways that we can address climate change. Let's talk about what the private sector is doing to accelerate us to a solution. And I think the main thing that we must address is being able to reduce our emissions to nearly zero. And I think we can get there. If you look at a combination of residential energy use as well as the use of energy in automobiles, those are two large sources of energy that are spent. And those are the two areas that we can very quickly address. So let's talk about residential energy, whether it's solar, whether it's wind options. Let's talk about getting the private sector. And there's a large market. It's growing, it's competitive, and it's becoming extremely profitable. And prices for consumers are dropping. So more people can get solar. They're able to get other renewable energy options that can really address the usage of coal and other things that come from fossil fuels. So we can move away from fossil fuels very quickly by changing our infrastructure. Again, the private sector is very quickly addressing these concerns. So we have new utilities that are rising up that are based in renewable energy options, whether it's hydro, whether it's geothermal. So let's look at not only the state-specific ways that we can really enhance our energy usage to limit the use of fossil fuels and move towards alternative forms of energy. Let's also look at making sure that we can incentivize the private market to be able to meet the demand of consumers. In Nevada, we have an amazing future ahead of us. We have a great climate, very great region for solar production. So we must look at ways to expand solar production so that it becomes the main source of energy generation in our state. We also need to make sure that we are looking at ways that we can also incentivize consumers. And we do that by ensuring that prices are low. They're improving battery technology. So in vehicles, the batteries are becoming less toxic because we can move on to different minerals. We can improve the cobalt that we use in our batteries. We can reduce the lead. So these are not only efficient when being put into waste, because that's another very important part of the equation, is also making sure you're not just changing our means of energy generation. You're also changing the means of energy storage with batteries, as well as really being able to provide that to people in a quicker way than you've ever been able to do it, which, again, I don't think it's from these hugely transformative policies that are being bounced about in Congress. I think we have to look at how we can very practically and pragmatically get us to a zero emission future.
Now, you know, I'm a country boy, and us country boys, we like a good fight, and we want to see a little mudslinging right now. Now, I know that you're a smart guy. You know, you work at Tesla. What I want to know is, where do you see your competitor failing in the climate change struggle? Where do you see that you have the advantage there?
The advantage as far as over the internal combustion engine vehicles, like the
over who you're running against in your race.
Okay, understood. Yes, I'm running against Stephen Horsford. He is a corporate Democrat. He is not prescribing to any of the more radical options for climate change, but he's also not addressing it head on with how we can actually change the way consumers live, because we have to address behavioral changes. That's a big part of our climate challenge, is the way humans behave and how that correlates to the use of energy and energy policy and the energy usage that we how that contributes to the climate conversation, of course, is that we're so reliant on fossil fuels, and that is very detrimental to our atmosphere and other processes. So where my competitor stands on this is really to ensure that he can provide subsidies. I do not support subsidies for corporations. They were used before, and a lot of those corporations are now way ahead of their competitors. I don't think it should be balanced out purely by consumers. Consumers will pick the best product, and right now they're picking the most advanced and most efficient energy electrical vehicles. And that's how we're improving in the electrical vehicle market, is that consumers are picking better vehicles. So now we have more charging stations, and we have more within the market to be able to provide convenience to people who want to transition or transfer to an electrical vehicle option.
Yeah, and that, you know, that speaks to an evolution in human consciousness, and I think that's the way that we're headed, because we all realize, man, that this is real. This climate, it's not going away, and you can deny it all you want to, but the fact of the matter is, it's about to get really, really bad.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So one last question before we get you out of here, okay? Elon has battled California and opened up his plant there. Is it a good move? Is it a bad move? Or it doesn't fucking matter because he's going to get us to Mars?
Well, again, you know, I think a lot of times we don't, when we talk about climate change, we like to talk about public utilities and again, Green New Deals and these largely transformative policies that would just eradicate entire ways of life, really, and do it so rapidly without considering waste and waste management and what to do with these vehicles, and addressing poverty, as many people can't afford transitioning so quickly. So with Tesla in California opening its plant, I can't speak as an employee. I can just speak on what's been presented to the public, and that is that there was a thorough and well-discussed plan for reopening. We have a plant in China. They learned from how to operate safely, really very close to the epicenter of this pandemic. So they have all the precautions and all of the processes necessary to operate safely. I don't think they're shoving people into the factory. I've not been there personally myself. I do have official emails that do come into me. I can't speak about those, but publicly, Tesla does have a plan, and I do believe it is a good decision to reopen our plant. There's other manufacturers of vehicles that are already producing vehicles. I don't believe Alameda County should really be stopping Tesla from operating. I think this is a good thing, and I think between all parties, between the president, between the governor of California, Gavin Newsom, as well as Alameda County and Tesla, I think all parties were able to work it out. And I think it's good that they've been able to reopen without any legal issue.
That was a great answer, brother. Jonathan, thank you so much for being on Democracy Discussions. We hope that you will come back and see us.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much, brother.
You take care. Be safe.
You too. All right. We got 2 more to go. Let me get his name off of here. We have 2 more to go. And now the next one holds a special place in one of our viewers' hearts. And we are joined by Dan Larson. Dan, how are you doing?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm doing really good. And you know what I think is really amazing is that you are running as a Republican. And, you know, I am so sick of hearing your competitors' commercials on my channel that it just drives me crazy.
So you get direct Steve Daines commercials on your channel?
Yeah, I sure do. I watched about 3 or 4 of them. I saw Mitch McConnell in his mouth going a while ago on one of them. It's crazy. So I really appreciate you being on the show tonight. And we are talking climate change. The floor is yours.
All right. So I think when we're talking about climate change, it's important to talk about the movement that we're involved in. And I would label it as the math movement, with a bunch of people that are focused on solutions to problems based on evidence and data. But I'm up against a pretty powerful and well-funded opponent. And I think that what we're doing here is pretty important. But I'm not sure that enough people in Montana will agree with me in time that we need to change the Republican Party. So I think the Republican Party has been getting the climate conversation wrong, the environmental conversation wrong, and it needs to change. So I might not be your first pro-UBI Republican senator, but that doesn't mean I'm stopping. So for me, a win looks like if I could be part of the change that leads to transformation in U.S. politics, I'm winning. If I can grow this movement, I'm winning. You and I are on the ground floor of a movement that focuses on solutions, a movement that unites us in a common understanding, a movement that will change the politics of this nation. So we will have our day. We'll have our glory. And I hope to hell it starts with Heidi next week in Oregon. So no matter what, we'll have to keep on marching. All of us have a part to play, and it's our job to keep going. So we need to grow, and this starts with conversations that we're all having with the people that we know, and building that's across this nation. So I envision a nation where all future candidates will have to listen to us, members of this math movement, to win an election. And we need both sides of the aisle to give us strength. So this is both Democrat and Republican. So when we talk about the environment, let's just talk about what we want for future generations. I asked my 5-year-old son this morning, I said, is it important that your children have clean air, clean water, and enough food to eat? And surprisingly, he said that it is important. And most of us agree. When you look at the surveys on this issue, most of us agree that we're all worried about our environmental future. So why is there so much division? I'm from Montana, which is a state in which they didn't quite prepare my generation environmentally. So when I was a kid, we used to have stage 1 air alerts every day where we were several times throughout the course of the year where we couldn't even breathe the air outside and they had to keep us inside. I had a bus trip every day to school when I lived in Rock Creek and had to go to school in Drummond. It was 45 miles along this beautiful river. The Clark Fork River, if you ever get a chance to see it, is beautiful. But when I was a kid, there was barely any fish in it because it was downstream from one of the world's largest copper mines. And then when I went to junior high in Summers, Montana, that school was located right next to a Superfund site where they had been for nearly 100 years treating railroad ties. And so it left it with a huge economic cleanup. So a lot of our previous environmental impacts were subsidized by us. So we're taking care of them. Our streams are getting healthier. Our air is getting cleaner. And we're taking care of some of these issues. But when you look around Montana, you see that there's a danger when we create our economies built off of extraction. So especially when you're building your economy around an unsustainable practice, it leads to a single source of income. With that income goes away, all you're left with is an eroded community and long-term environmental impacts. So I would like to see a future where we focus more on the issues that we really have on hand. And so when we look at water across this nation, we have a system where we all have heavy metals. A lot of our communities suffer from heavy metal impacts. Our food system is broken. Our carbon cycle is broken, and we need to focus on clean air. So right now in Montana, when we talk about climate change, we have the opportunity to have the high water mark be the stopping of the Keystone XL pipeline coming from Montana. So what this means is that you would stop the world's most energy intensive oil from going on market by stopping a project that is based off of job creation, but it does not deliver what it's expected to. It would just be a faster route to the climate impacts of using the world's most energy intensive oil. But right now, if you look at Steve Daines and Steve Bullock, both the left and the right on the aisle, they're for this issue. And why is that? So if we all agree that we want a better future, why is it that our climate conversation keeps going off? And there is billions of dollars being spent to divide us on this issue. And it has to do with the economics of the people that already have established positions in the industry. And so it will take candidates like us coming up from the ground to really fight back against the power and the politically powerful and the money that's involved here to create a better future. And I really do think it starts with the fundamentals of UBI to get the boot off the throat of the people. And it really starts once we get there, then we can start moving towards a future that we all agree on.
For sure. And it's so refreshing to hear you as a Republican say that. I'll be running as a Republican here in Vermont against Peter Welch the next time out. And, it's going to take us on both sides to get something like universal basic income passed through. Right. And I got to apologize for not reading your introduction. Allow me to read your introduction real quick. Dan is an Andrew Yang supporter and a Republican, or what some have said, a Yang publican. He is a strong proponent of public land rights and is running for the U.S. Senate in the Montana Republican primary. His primary opponent, incumbent Senator Steve Daines, is working to bring the Keystone XL pipeline to eastern Montana. These last couple of minutes that we have, it's hard to believe that even out somewhere as beautiful as Montana, that you guys, you experience your own trials. And I think that Joshua and I spoke about this the other day, Joshua Frick, your campaign manager, and we were talking about how, it's not bringing jobs actually to Montanans. It's bringing people who work for these big companies from out of state and bringing them in and letting them have jobs.
Right, and it creates this, if you look at Williston, North Dakota, it had a similar issue. We just got through a energy boom within the fracking industry, and it left these communities, because these are man camp communities, so you see huge spikes in crime, sex trafficking, the cartels get involved, and these things, when they're talked about as far as from economic growth, they're really not saying, yeah, this only has 35 jobs in the U.S. long term, and pipelines leak, and it's not even competitive. This oil is not competitive on the global market, and it is the most energy intensive oil that we could be putting on market. So we sacrifice our water, the health of our communities, and these things are just done for a political purpose, and we need to start looking at these things from the data that's involved.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more, brother. Dan, give out your information again real quick.
Yeah, so the website is danformontana.com. I'm on Twitter at danformontana, Facebook as well. If you need something, just reach out.
Absolutely. Dan, thank you so much for joining us for Democracy Discussions. We hope to have you on the channel real soon, brother. Thank you so much.
Yeah, just send me an invite.
For sure. All right, we have one to go, one candidate to go. Last but not least, drum roll, please. But while I'm getting this up here, I wanted to take the time to thank all of our Patreons and donors of this channel. Thank you so much for always being here. I see a lot of familiar faces in the chat. Thank you so much. Oh, man. Did I lose my... Uh-oh. Oh, man. I lost my thing. Let me add this banner real quick, y'all. You know, it's the first night that we've done this, so we're going to have a few technical difficulties. It's just the way it is. I'm forgetting to read introductions, pronouncing people's names wrong. Rick Shepard.
Hello,
Are you
sir.
there, sir?
I am. It's a pleasure to see you.
Thank you
How
for
are you?
joining us for Democracy Discussions. I'm doing awesome. So let me read your introduction real quick. Rick occupied Wall Street, exposed institutional racism in the Reno Police Department, resulting in the termination of the chief of police. He is the NAACP Environment and Climate Justice Committee chair. Rick is running for the U.S. House of Representatives, Nevada's second congressional district. Rick, you know, that first line, it kind of threw me, and I had to read it a couple times because it said that you occupied Wall Street. And for a second, I was like, hold on, wait a second. But then, you know, I don't know. We occupied Bank of America. I don't know if that counts or not.
It absolutely counts.
Well, thank you for joining us. Today's topic is climate change, and the floor is yours.
I appreciate it. And it is nice to follow Dan because he's on the right track with a lot of these things. Here in Nevada, we are dry. There is nowhere left to dig. There's nowhere to pull water. So our only solution is desalination. And that is going to tie in perfectly with a national infrastructure program. When you think about when we were developing America, the Manifest Destiny times, we had a railroad system that we put in. We later went to highways and telephony. Every time we've done this, it has led to profound benefits for everybody. We need to do the same thing with water. All right, Nevada's dry. Flint, Michigan has dirty water. Florida's got seawater. All of this is our fault, our problem, and our concern. And these are good paying domestic jobs that can't be exported and will be done here in perpetuity. You know, we saw in the last administration an enthusiasm for building pipelines. I want to do the same thing, but just move water instead of hydrocarbons through them. At least then when our pipelines leak, we'll just temporarily moisten some spot instead of destroy it. The energy solutions that we're going to bring forth using molten salt reactors and thorium to power these things will allow us to run desalination and reintroduce water into what is currently desertification. And we can reverse some of these processes that have been leading to the climate catastrophe. Now, out here in rural Nevada, there's a huge fight for water. Miners, ranchers, farmers, all need access to the lands and the water. And then you have, of course, the people and the agriculture that goes along with supporting us. No one is wrong. They all have a claim, but there just isn't enough to go around unless we bring it in from the outside. And so that's why, as part of addressing climate change, a national infrastructure program for water is a critical piece of it. There are 7 basic human rights that I believe need to be put forth as a new Bill of Rights for human beings. And those are power, as in electrical power, water, internet, housing, healthcare, education, and voting. Provide these 7 basics to all human beings. Lift people up from Maslow's hierarchy of needs through the fundamentals and to a point where they can start looking for something that looks like self-actualization. And we will see declines in mental illness. We will see improvements in life expectancies. We will see a renaissance, I believe, in ideas and creativity. Because right now, people are desperate and people are overworked and overburdened. And when you're in those environments, it is almost impossible to be creative or clever or thoughtful or do anything of significance with long-term ideas when you're worried about where your next meal is coming from. If we're going to truly stand one with each other, if we're going to fight for someone that we don't know, if we are going to be the Star Trek future instead of the Mad Max future, then we're going to have to start addressing these problems in a holistic and top-down approach. We can't fight each other for something that everybody needs and everybody has a right to. We need to fix the problem with the shortage, because in all actuality, we don't have any shortages. We have distribution problems, and we can address that through effective legislation. And as your congressman here in Northern Nevada, that's what I intend to do, is to push for sensible legislation that addresses climate change as the existential threat that it is, presents healthcare as a human right. These are basic. This is something that we all can agree upon, and it doesn't matter what state you're in or what district you're from. These are universal, and we will provide it because that's how we, the people, deserve to be treated.
For sure. And you said that you didn't have a resource problem. You said that you have a distribution problem. Well, how do you solve that?
It depends on the problem that we're having to distribute. For example, housing. We have 500,000 or so homeless people. We have 6 times that in empty homes. That's a simple concept of a distribution problem. But speaking to climate change, there's tons of water. It's just dirty or salty. So we can process it out and get it where we need it in the way that we need it. And part of that's going to be reintroducing it back into the environment and reverse the desertification and reignite these springs that have been depleted. Water table drops of just a foot will take a natural spring and render it inoperable in many cases. And then all the flora and fauna, the autochthonous horses, the indigenous peoples that all rely upon these things are left out. And we can do better than this. So in the part of reversing the problem, we'll also be treating each other decently. So it's worth it.
For sure. And I hope very much that we get to that Star Trek future that you were talking about, and not the Mad Max. But touching on that Mad Max scenario, you're kind of seeing it on a small scale. You were talking about how people out there, how all these different factions are fighting for the same resources. Talk about that for a minute.
Well, that's the crux of all of these conflicts. It's 2 or more people wanting the same one thing, when in actuality, we have more than enough of it to go around. Water's not in short supply. It just has to be directed properly. There's nothing in the world we can't afford. We're trillionaires with lead in our pipes, and there's no excuse for that. We've been good at water since Romans built aqueducts, and we've been good at desalination for decades, and we've been good at thorium since the 60s. These are things that we solved a long time ago. It's a matter of will. And when Wall Street can absorb trillions of dollars in a whiff and just let it evaporate, instead of giving each adult American a $30,000 boost, it's demonstrated that obviously debts and deficits don't matter. Obviously, modern monetary theory is the solution. Obviously, we can afford anything we want. We need only choose to do so. And for them to have all of that potential and then refuse to act, to refuse to lift the least among us up to something that is reasonable, it shows where their loyalties lie. Now, we've seen time and time again that legislation, bipartisan or not, it always comes out that it's the 1% who get it. It has been proven time and again. It doesn't matter if you're Republican or Democrat. The leadership on both sides say yes to war, yes to Wall Street, yes to deregulation. They say no to healthcare, no to raising the minimum wage. They have everything locked up, and the only thing we can do is vote in their replacements. They will not capitulate. They cannot be reasoned with. They cannot be dealt with. They don't feel pity or remorse or fear, and they absolutely will not stop ever until you are dead.
Preach! Preach! I'm telling you what's the truth, buddy. You got me so fired up sitting over here. I'm telling you what, you made a statement just a few seconds ago. You said that we are trillionaires living with lead in our pipes. Oh my gosh, that is probably the most powerful statement to come out of tonight's episode. Wow, that was because that was so correct. That was so correct.
Thank you. I'm sorry that it's true.
For sure. Rick, thank you so much for being on Democracy Discussions. Please give out your information real quick.
You can visit me at rickshepard.com. Find me on Facebook and Twitter. And if you're so inclined, get in contact, because we are in the middle of our primary right now. It's a mail-in ballot, and it is currently in people's hands. So the more we can reach out and touch people directly, the more likely we are to be able to get them to put the mark where we want it.
For sure. And brother, we will definitely reach out to you and see about getting you on our show. Thank you so much for being here, Rick.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure. Good night.
Night. Wow. Our first democracy discussions, I don't know about y'all, but I thought it was a success. We had some hiccups. We had some technical difficulties, but we got it worked out, and we had an awesome time. We had a bunch of great candidates on here tonight. Please go to their websites. Please visit them. Support their candidacies if you so choose. We must put out the disclaimer that the views and the opinions expressed by the candidates are their own and not those of American Dystopia, except for Rick Shepard's last statement. I wish I could put that on my wall and preach it every day. My goodness gracious. Thank you so much for being here. See you next week.